Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. I want to thank you guys for joining me for another Age Reforged replay battle. Today we are going to be playing on the .97 test build again, and I really wanted to show you this battle for a few reasons. One, because it highlights some new mechanics that have a fairly, I don't want to say massive impact, but they do have an impact on the way that your battles are going to play out depending on what kind of terrain that you're fighting in, but I'll get into that in a minute. And the other reason was that I wanted to show off this new map that I've made. I think it might have been shown maybe once or twice before. I know we did this map on Pixelated Apollo stream, but to my knowledge it hasn't been given a proper introduction. So I would like to introduce you all to the GIRITHLIN Downs map. This is a map that I made. Let's get rid of that little pause thing there. And this map, as you might guess, takes place in the former kingdom of GIRITHLIN. So we're going to see the barrows there, for which that kingdom is so famous. This one, I blended Amonhen into there just so it would look like the barrow of someone a little bit more important at a glance. And there's going to be lots of like fallen architecture and stuff like that, because it takes place, as I mentioned, in the kingdom of GIRITHLIN, which has fallen into disrepair, but once was part of the mighty nation of Numenorians that ruled Arnor. So there's going to be a lot of remnants of their former glory present on the map, and as I said, a couple of the barrows as well. I tried to keep them outside of the bounds of the playable area, just so that the terrain that was available would be used solely for playing and not just have space taken up by these beautiful but very, very large little doodads. So we move a little bit farther over here. You can see a lake and a river that divides off these two barrows. There are two ways on of various lengths and widths. So this one a little bit more suitable for bringing an army across en masse if you were going to attack some forces who had entrenched themselves on this side of the river. And over here, a little bit smaller, and it's got a road that actually, a very beaten and old path that leads to the township over here, and then another one that leads to this area over here where the King's Barrow is. So obviously this, either the road here, depending on how you want to interpret this, the road here is a little bit better made, or this area was abandoned a little bit more recently. I like to try and tell little stories with the maps that I make, so yeah, that's one of those little details that is there for those who are observant, I should say. Over here, from this more like wild area, a little bit wider, that leads to the two barrows over there. There's like a hilly area. So lots of hills in here, lots of possibility for using terrain to your advantage and flanking movements, and it just kind of generally breaks up an army's advance in here, so it ends up being a little bit more chaotic. It certainly has been in a number of battles that I played on this map. And then all of that leads into a slightly less hilly area, but still fairly hilly, that goes in behind this fairly modern or modest township. Very much a long way to fall from the Numenorian architecture and all the stonework and stuff that we've seen a little bit earlier near the barrows and stuff like that. But just signs that civilization has continued throughout the ages, and that the fall of the Numenorian civilization was replaced with something a little bit more medieval and a little bit less high fantasy. Again, I like to tell stories with the maps. I like to make them feel lived in. And then finally, got another set of lakes over here. A very beautiful wild terrain that GIRITHLIN is. And there's lots of ways on and off. A little island in the center here that's got, I think, at least 3 ways onto it. There's one road here that leads from the township, one here that leads out from the wilderness, and then another one that's a little bit smaller that leads onto this island. So lots of ways to approach the many choke points on this map. And then, of course, there's a wide open area over here that you could use potentially to bombard your enemies into submission. So that's all for the map introduction. We're now back where we started. Thank you for indulging me. Let's take a look at some of the army comps, and then we can get into the replay itself. I hope you guys enjoy it. So the first army we're going to look at today is the forces of Dol Amroth, being commanded by myself. And I think this battle was done on 14K, so it's a little bit larger in scale than the 13K budget that we heartily recommend. Just because you don't have to make as many hard choices. So yeah, the 1K really definitely does make a difference. I brought some Aerotherum of Dol Amroth, the new knight unit for Dol Amroth. Let's see if I can get you a decent little look at them there. And I've paired them with a unit of the Parathil Horse Guard, another new unit for Dol Amroth. in 0.97. We've really tried to spice them up a lot. They're a bit bland in 0.96, but in moving into 0.97, they'll definitely have their own identity. Very, very strong, very viable faction. I've got 2 units here of the Diurnal Archers. I've gone for more of a heavy infantry build with some cavalry support. I was going to try and make this into a rush, but it just doesn't really end up turning out that way, and turns out to be quite the opposite, in fact. Here we get into my infantry formation. On my left wing, I've got some Tarnostian Shield Bearers. I backed them up with some Black Swan Renegades, a little bit of armor piercing, because I am going to be facing off against Rune today. We've got some Champions of Kobos Haven as well, one of my favorite new shock units moving into 0.97. Very, very durable, very strong once they get into melee. Of course, you want to be careful with them. They have the usual weaknesses of being a little bit weaker to arrows, not so much just because of their high armor values, but they're also quite vulnerable to javelin and cavalry charges, so be aware. Here I've got my front line. It's a fairly modest phalanx. I think I've got 2 units of the Adelan Men-at-Arms and 2 units of Diurnal Pikemen, all fully upgraded. And then moving on over here, I've got some Tarnostian Shield Bearers as well, and the same kind of setup. So Tarnostian Shield Bearers, Black Swan Renegades, and then some Champions of Kobos Haven. And then in my center, I got a single unit of Talon Knights. I've tried to intersperse my line with the new Inspire traits. So previously the Inspire traits that are native to the vanilla game, it wasn't really clear how much they did. It might have just been 1 morale, so it might not have been a huge boost, just because units in Medieval 2 and the vanilla tend to have a little bit lower morale, so even 1 is proportionally quite larger in Medieval 2 than it would be in Armand. So we've changed that. So now units like Talon Knights, like the Champions of Kobos Haven, they get +2 morale to units within a 25-meter radius. So very useful for keeping the morale of my Dolimarth units, which is already reasonably high, up generally across the board. Then move into my Pride and Joy. Got some Haven Knights. Not going to be where my generals hanging out today, though. They've also got a company of Parathil Randirum, one of the horse archer units that's been added to Dolimarth. So now Dolimarth has a little bit more variety on their cavalry wing. Generally a bit more high tier and a bit more expensive, whereas their infantry units are a bit more conventionally priced, I would say. But yeah, interesting faction. So going now to my ally, we have the forces of Rudour. Now, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was talking about terrain bonuses. Rudour does get, instead of the traditional bonuses, where like Rudour heavy infantry will get +1 in on scrub terrain, for example. I think they get +2 in the forest. It might just be +1, and then maybe +1 in snow as in addition to, making them a little bit more versatile, and certainly fitting with the area of the world they inhabit. But long story short, Rudour forces do get a bonus in the woods, so that's going to be important in this battle. Dunman Hunters here, 2 lines of Dunman Hunters. Got some Ettenmoor Troll Hunters as well. 2 units, I believe, of the Ettenmoor Troll Hunters. It's going to be hard to pick everybody out here since there's going to be a lot of hiding units. Got a Phalanx here as well, composed of Rudour Swordsmen and Hereditary Pikemen. There's that second company of the Ettenmoor's Troll Hunters. What do we got here? Some Clansmen. A lot of Clansmen. Coldfell Maidens here as well. I believe there's 2 companies of the Coldfell Maidens. Spear Cavalry, Jav Cavalry, very versatile. Don't have an EP charge, however, which makes them stand out a little bit more from other Spear Cavalry and Lancers that don't have javelins. More Clansmen. Some Rudour Marksmen over here as well. I think he's got some Hereditary Berserkers, which will probably be hiding somewhere in the woods. I know he's definitely got a bunch of the Dunman Spears. We are having a bit of an issue with some of the Dunman Spear units where the non-upgraded version is invisible. So there might be more Dunman Spears than what you're seeing here. But yeah, Dunman Spearmen right there. And I think that does it for most of Engsfist's army, although I know I'm missing a unit of Hereditary Nobles who are probably around here somewhere. More Clansmen right there. So a very sizable Rudour army, but not a ton of like a devastating elite quality. Oh, and right, of course, he's got 2 units of the Faradum Javelins, I believe. Which is why he's got so many lower tier units. And he's also got a unit of Hereditary Rangers hanging out here somewhere. So that's going to do it for the blue team. Let's go ahead and see what Team Red is bringing to the battle today. Across the field from my ally, we have the heavy infantry army of the Kingdom of Numenor. And this army is going to be commanded by Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud. And Numenor is going to love fighting in this kind of terrain. Inside the township is where they're going to be getting their bonuses. So this battle there's a lot of elements and moving parts to it. It's quite tactical, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to show it to you today. But in any case, Eclipse has a couple units here of the Romena Marksmen. I think he's got a 3rd company over here as well, which is the max. He's got a fourth one. What do you know? You can generally only bring 3 of the Romena Marksmen, so it looks like Eclipse has opted to pay a little bit extra for them. Believe three or 4 units there of the Romena Marines. A couple units of Romena Sentinels, third company of the Romena Sentinels there, fourth company of the Romena Sentinels, Alcaronda's Faithful, and some Temple Executioners in addition too. Not a lot of cavalry, definitely a lot of infantry here, which is what Numenor tends to specialize in. I think that... Now he's also got a hidden company of the Shadow Guard here as well, so he's going to have some Numenorian Rangers on the field, in addition to all of that. Moving on now to his ally, we have the Kingdom of Rune, being commanded by D.I. King of the North. D.I. doesn't usually play Rune. I think he's been experimenting with him quite a lot lately. I've certainly played a few games with him and seen him play in a few. And he's brought Dragon Wrath crossbows. Actually, in this build, Rune got a few little buffs as well. So, Dragon Wrath crossbows are one of the units that receive that buff. A little bit of extra melee defense and some attack as well. Still as deadly as ever with that Blacklock projectile they're using for the time being. Luxion Rim here as well. I think they doubled their melee defense from 3 to 6. So certainly much more tanky with their high shield and high armor values now in addition to. Flag Rim, always a nice... Well, they are the flagship unit of Rune. Always a nice addition. Very strong against heavy infantry. And against my Dol Amroth forces, they are definitely going to be king. And back here we got some Eastron Crossbowmen. Two companies of the Eastron Crossbowmen. I don't know if we can see them out front here. They might be hiding, but we've definitely got some Eastron Hunters as well. More Scion Rim. One thing to know about the Scion Rim is that they also inspire. +2 in 25 meters. Got some Eastron Warriors here as well. Bunch of the Eastron Warriors. Eastron Warriors are actually a really interesting unit in .97. They've been given a proper fatigue trait. They're no longer a low-tier militia unit. They're really more of like a mid-tier, more offensively oriented man-at-arms unit with a bit more men and higher melee defense, since that's kind of... Rune is a little bit more aggressive, and their higher melee defense is going to make up for their lack of a shield, at least once they get into close quarters. Over here, got the Camel's Dragon Knights. Everybody loves Camel's Dragon Knights. Very strong unit. Bit slow, but devastating on the charge. Dragon's Wrath Warlords in addition to, and two companies of the Variags of the Steppes. Now, there are some other hidden units in here that we are not going to be able to see for a little bit, and one of them is the Balkoth Sapphire Bladesmen, who I believe have had a significant boost to their melee defense. And they have about 12 melee defense, still low on armor, a little bit of a shield value in addition to, but they have these big Dacian Falxes, which are armor piercing, but just, we decided, hey, why not do this? Dacian Falxes were excellent at you know, cracking open Roman heads and shearing apart shields, so why the hell not? So they're armor piercing, and they have the Throne trait as well. So a very versatile unit, but they're a bit lower on number than a lot of elite units, and of course the light armor and the low shield value does lend them to being shot to bits if your enemy can get bowmen within range. And the other unit is, I think it's got some just regular run-of-the-mill Balkoth tribesmen, so a lot of AP damage here, which is certainly something that I was expecting, especially in the mid-range, so I'm going to be very cautious with my army, but you'll see all about that in just a few moments. I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I wanted to take my time with this. I had intended to rush, which is why most of my army is infantry, and a lot of it is geared towards overwhelming my enemies, especially the way that I've stacked my wings. You can see that that's very much the case, especially with my cavalry in addition to supporting those units. But once I saw what Rune had, and I kind of suspected that he had a little bit more, I didn't want to be too hasty in engaging him in close quarters. And my ally, Rudauer, definitely does not want to walk into that township and pick a straight one-to-one fight with the Numenorians. They are very strong, and that is a fight that Numenor would win, hands down, most of the time. And what do you know, we had a little bit of an oops here from Numenor. I didn't even realize they had a ballista. I totally forgot about it. Yeah, they're going to lumber that siege weapon out of the forest. And I think Engsfitz is going to notice it once it breaks the tree line. So we should see some of his cavalry begin to beeline for it. Especially, you know, like the Coldfell Maidens tossing their javelins. They could destroy that unit very, very, very quickly. So Eclipse is going to want to be careful once that ballista breaks cover. Now, where did it go? Oh yeah, here we are. It's not broken the tree line. Pretty close to the Romena Sentinels. Should be okay to get that into the township. But you can see Engsfitz is already reacting. Coldfell Maidens, 2 units of them, in fact, rushing towards that position. Let's get a nice little shot here. Fast forward it just a little bit so that we can see those deadly and beautiful Rudauer ladies from the perspective of someone who might be observing on the ground. I'm going to break that tree line. A lightning assault on that ballista is going to begin. Oops, sorry about that. There they are, letting those javelins fly. Ooh, that's really going to hurt that ballista. Yeah, you can see just how quickly that focus fire is going to bring that that ballista down. It's a good thing for Eclipse that that wasn't farther away from his army, because this would otherwise spell the end of that ballista. Wow, look at that. Less than half strength in just a few moments. Eclipse, not Eclipse, rather Inksfit's alternating his fire onto the Remenda Sentinels, claiming some of the lives of those pikemen. Certainly going to make his life a little bit easier. He is starting to take some pretty heavy casualties now from the Coldfell Maidens, so Inksfit's is going to retreat, leaving a pretty sizable pile of dead Coldfell Maidens on the ground, but he's still got a good deal of them left. And one thing to note here, which I thought was, whether this was intentional or not, it's definitely something that I'm going to try and incorporate into my games in the future, is that Inksfit's turned around and began to run away when the Numenor marksmen were in between a volley. Which means that he has a better chance of getting out of range before they can fire, and also he's not going to get shot in the back immediately upon turning around. So definitely a little detail that I think gets missed a lot, but can have some pretty dire consequences for any unit that you're trying to make a tactical retreat with. So in your games, try and keep an eye on like where your enemy skirmishers are in terms of their animation, and then plan your moves accordingly. Let's see here. Now things are going to slow down quite a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward things here because I don't want to make cuts and then have you guys miss things. So there's going to be a lot of fast forwarding going on. Alcaron as Faithful looking to repay the favor to Rudour. Inksfit is already on top of it, however. He's got his Coldfell Maidens getting themselves in position. A lot of Rudour archers that can't really be seen all that clearly, opening fire from the tree line. And it's just I really love this matchup here. It's like this guerrilla Rudour force where it's not really clear exactly how many of them there are in there, who are definitely more at home fighting in the forest than they are in the open, squaring off against one of the finest militaries in Middle-earth that ever was. So it's almost like Vietnam in certain ways. Like Charlie's hiding out there in the trees, waiting for the Numenorians to make that mistake, whereas the Numenorians want to draw us into the open. Over here, kind of the opposite. And actually, one thing I forgot to mention earlier, let's turn the speed down a little bit. Pike units, pikes and polearms as well, get a penalty in the woods the same as cavalry units. So cavalry units take a proportional, based on like their charge and things like that, penalty in the woods, and the pikes have the same thing as well. So higher tier units are going to take higher penalties, lower tier units are going to take lower penalties. It's all basically based on a percentage of certain stats that they have. So I find that works out, but it's definitely something that I forgot about, which is terrible because I put the bonuses in there in the first place. And so I brought a couple of pike units, just a habit mostly. Let's see what's going on here. And the Alcarondas Faithful, I think, are being shadowed. Some Coldfell Maidens there. There might also be the Harenadine Nobles as well. Oh man, if those Jav Cav units get anywhere near the Alcarondas Faithful, that's going to be ugly. It's a very small unit already, and they're only 2 HP. So, yes, focus fire from javelins will bring them down pretty quickly. Ballista firing randomly into the woods, trying to hurt somebody. Just imagine that. I really like to try and get into people's boots in this, but imagine you're this ballista crew. This is what you can see. You can see movement in the tree line, but you're like, I got no idea where they are, how many they are, how densely they're packed. This is just, it's almost blind fire at this point. Let's see what's going on over here. So let's go ahead, fast forward. It's going to be a lot of ballista shots, and Inksfit's reacting to that. So you can see now that he's going after the phalanx in the center. So Inksfit has started to spread out his Harenadine pikemen and his Rudour swordsmen in return, just because he wants to try and minimize the casualties. And you can really do that to a huge degree when you're facing down artillery like this. Just spread your units out, make thin lines, and you'll generally be okay. I'm over here supporting my ally with a unit of Perithil. I think I've been kind of skirmishing a little bit with some of the Eastern Hunters, trying to get some inflating fire, maybe help out my units, but for the most part, I've been keeping my distance with my army. I don't want to move in and start losing my Door Nodal Archers to the volley fire of the huge amounts of Eastern Hunters until I absolutely have to. Until I'm ready to actually capitalize on the sacrifice that I'm making. Ooh, over here, Alcaron's Faithful charging in to the Dunman Hunters, trying to launch a lightning strike, getting attacked by spearmen. I think I saw some of the Edmore's Troll Hunters tossing them. Oh yes, I forgot about this. Oh, it was so tragic. Eclipse on his way out of there ends up clipping into his own stakes. So the Alcaron's Faithful going to take a huge amount of damage there. Drop from 23 to 9, and Eclipse at this point was like, ah, screw it. Just going to turn around with this Alcaron's Faithful, go for another charge, but this time it's going to be into Dunman Spearmen. It's going to charge into the rear, though. This is going to ignore their albeit meager melee defense value, but also their shield. An alright charge. Lots of Dunman Hunters here, a third line of the Edmore's Troll Hunters. This is why Inksvitz was more than willing to let the Alcaron's Faithful in the first place charge into his unit. Well, there they go again. Trying to muscle their way through there and get into the Dunman Hunters, but I believe they're on hold their ground stance, so they will be able to continuously fire despite the intervention of the Alcaron's Faithful. So we got going on over here. Yeah, for Rune and I, it's mostly a lot of maneuvering. Neither of us really wants to move forward because I'm sure he's taken a good look at my army. It's not exactly well hidden, and you can see that I've got some nasty close quarters units here. Probably went a little bit harder onto the infantry than I think DI was expecting. His skirmishers would have been, if I had to use my cavalry against this, his skirmishers and his positioning would have been an absolute nightmare for me to assault. But with more infantry, I do have a chance to successfully assault this township. Now the Rudauer army has kind of showed its hand a little bit. They've come basically to the border of the forest, broken from the tree line, and they're going straight toe-to-toe with the Romena marksmen. Now, this isn't going to be terribly effective, but it does have the psychological effect of kind of irritating your enemies, and sometimes they'll just be like, hey, screw it, and abandon a good position, so that's one thing. Also, there is some slight attrition here. As you can see, some of the Romena marksmen are falling to the just sheer volume of fire that those lower tier units can bring to bear. So last time I talked a little bit about how higher tier archers are generally a lot better in just about every situation than the lower tier archers, which is still true, but the lower tier archers have this going for them. They can just flood an area with missiles. Not so much to the extent that they can in 0.96.1, but it does over time take a toll, and these are heavily armored units with a decent shield value as well. So yeah, I think now would be a good time for the Romena marksman to try and fire back. That's certainly a problem here for Eclipse. I don't think he wants to waste ammunition on the Dunman Hunters, but they are doing steady damage to his units. It's going to take a while. They might claim like 20 or 30 men from the unit in total once they run out of ammunition, but still, that's a loss that's dearly felt for a faction like Numenor, who doesn't have quite so many numbers as the Kingdom of Men do. Another front about to be opened up here. Romena Sentinels about to come under some heavy fire. Now I think would be a good time to move in with some more shielded units. But you can see the attrition starting to take its toll here on Numenor. Numenor's being a little bit more passive, I think, than they really need to be. Trying to conserve their ammunition, which generally is a good idea. But yeah, these Romena marksmen should be used to try and at least minimize the damage that the Rudauer skirmishers are doing to the Numenorians. But yeah, they're holding their ground for the time being, and we'll see if that pays off for Numenor or not. But I'm gonna go ahead, fast forward things a little bit over here. Try to keep an eye on the Rudauer Numenor fights, since this is where a lot of the action is going to be. We're about halfway now, and not a whole lot has happened. So as I'm sure you can imagine, once things kick off, it's all going to happen all at once, and it's going to be just absolute chaos here. Let's see, we've gone over this direction. Ah, yes, some Coldfell Maidens being brought in behind the Numenorian position and saved for a rainy day. Numenor can't really afford to be aggressive with their Alcaron's Faithful anymore, since Eclipse had a bit of an oopsie So now they're just going to have to hold their ground and try and weather the oncoming storm. Dunman Spearmen here, engaging the Romanna Marksmen in close quarters. Romanna Marksmen may be archers, but they're still pretty damn good. Romanna Sentinels now, moving in support. And the Dunman Spearmen are going to find themselves on the business end of a disciplined and well-trained Numenorian battle line. Dunman Spearmen are going to try and retreat. Alcaranda's Faithful going to move in and make sure that they do not have that opportunity. Now that the Alcaranda's Faithful are engaged elsewhere, Engsvitz is going to take this opportunity to move into the township proper with his Coldfell Maidens. And I think the target here is going to be the Ballista. Certainly seems that way. Coldfell Maiden's gonna swing wide here around the Ballista, or around the right onto the side of the Ballista. And boom! Surprise attack from the rear. And those Numenorian crewmen are going to be in a lot of trouble. What we got over here, various of the steps from DI coming in, and that's actually going to save Numenor's bacon. They're going to be able to hold on to that Ballista, whereas if DI wasn't quite so on point, then Numenor would be down a siege engine now. And now I think Numenor has had enough. So they're going to break from the cover of the township, and they're going to rush the Rudauer line. Engsvitz's Dunman Spearman front line is going to move in to try and engage them and tie down the Numenorian forces. He's got some decent units here in reserve. I think he might even have some enslavers. No, we've got some clansmen over here in the woods. Fairly large amount of clansmen. Dunman hunters here getting caught out in the open by the sudden Numenorian advance. But as a result, the Numenorians are a little bit staggered in their advance. And Rudauer is going to have time, I think, to move forward with their front line. You can see the Rudauer phalanx moving forward to engage the Numenorian counterparts, their Numenorian counterparts. Let's go ahead and slow things down a little bit, because this is where it gets lots of fun. Camel's Dragon Knights have been brought over to support the Numenorian right wing. I think there's also some runic infantry that's being committed as well. Got the Warlords over here, some Lokeflag Rim, a lot of nasty stuff. So I'm going to spring into action. Got my Haven Knights here. Great engagement for them against the Dragon's Wrath Warlords if I can get a piece of them. There's a Flag Rim unit standing in my way. I've had to fall back with my Parathil Ranzirim, trying to frustrate the runic advance, get as many kills as I can, try and relieve some of the pressure on my allies' left wing, because Engsvitz is going to be in a lot of trouble here, and I don't want to necessarily move everything I have over onto this wing. So what I'm going to do instead is, because Rune is moving to Engsvitz's side with a lot of their forces, I'm going to begin to move forward with the main body of my army. I think I also commit one of my companies of Champions of Kobos Haven as well, just so I have some boots on the ground to try and help my ally hold down his wing. And I'm going to cut off the flow of runic reinforcements by threatening them with the bulk of my army. Because I'm Haven Knights here, charged into the Lokeflag Rim, got a decent amount of kills there, about 32. Gonna flee in the face of the Dragon Knights, but once I see I can attack the Dragon Knights at a disadvantage without letting them get their charge off, and then I'm gonna move in to engage with my Haven Knights. It's gonna be a tough fight here with the close attendance of with the Lokeflag Rim and close attendance supporting. Dragon's Wrath Warlords have also been brought over here as well, so I'm gonna be forced to flee with my Haven Knights. They're good, but they're not that good. Got my Champions of Kobos Haven over here as well, whose safety I need to be concerned about though. So I'm going to try and sandwich these Dragon's Wrath Warlords between my Champions and my Haven Knights. One thing to note is that these cavalry are getting a penalty in the woods here, so the infantry are going to have the advantage in close quarters, even more so than they already do. More of my Champions of Kobos Haven moving in. But this delay is going to cost my ally. Over here as well, my Parathil Ranzirim, fighting in close quarters against the Dragon Knights. Not something that you generally want to do, but it kept them from double teaming my Haven Knights and my Champions of Kobos Haven, so I was inclined to let them sit there for a little bit. I didn't want to lose them, so once the Hereditary Nobles arrive on scene and start engaging the Camel's Dragon Knights, I'm going to pull them out. But it is chaos over here. Rune is struggling to hold down their left wing, or Rudauer is struggling to hold their left wing. In the center, the Numenorian quality is definitely winning out. Over here, the Numenorians are a bit more thin on the ground, so Rudauer is winning on this side. And over here, the Numenorians have engaged the the next line of the Rudauer defense. And they're doing very well. They've got marksmen engaged in close quarters. They've got the clansmen fighting over there as well. Some clansmen are being either drawn up here onto the hill, where they can fight a little bit more effectively, or being thrown into the center to try and hold things down. Bit of a flanking movement here. Some clansmen being brought over to the one place where Numenor is losing. I think the intention here is to break the center and then potentially allow the Rudauer forces to roll up the Numenorian line, assuming that they can be held down long enough. Somebody's general just died. Might have been the Numenorians. Shadow Guard have been brought up. Very deadly against Rudauer. That's an absolute nightmare for them. Let's see what we got going on over here. My champions of Kobos Haven have managed to make it in against Scion Rim. They're a little bit broken up, so not a lot of cohesion here. I started to bring in some more infantry, Tarnassian shield bearers, to try and defend their rear from the Dragon's Wrath warlords. I think I've got my Haven Knights over here trying to make sure that these warlords don't charge into the rear of my champions of Kobos Haven. If that happened now, my champions would break and run, and that would be all she wrote for the small foothold I've managed to gain here against Rune. The rest of Rune's forces have been brought to bear over on this end. Got the Camel's Dragon Knights as well. And Rudauer has basically been annihilated here. Rudauer's going to spring into action, however. Got some hidden reserves for Rodman Javelins. I think it's 2 companies. It might just be the one. I think it is just the one, after all. Now they're being brought forward to menace this blob of Numenorian and Runic troops. Over here, Edmore's Troll Hunters holding down the line. Forming a secondary skirmish line here, and looks like they're going to use those units to spray down the Numenorian phalanx. Herenai Nobles nearby as well. Looks like they're going after the Dragon Knights. Nope, they're instead going to go for a charge against the Romena Marines, who are going to be all but helpless in the face of that brutal charge. Although with their high armor and decent melee defense values, they will stand up to that reasonably well. Dragon Knights over here. Ooh, look at this. Crossfire as Numenorian Marines get hit with a volley of there's some Troll Hunters over there, or the Axe Throwers. No, I missed the Axe Throwers. A very well-timed volley as well. Inksfits got out of there, let the Axe Throwers hit the Romena Marines, and then came back in. Unfortunately, it's going to hit his own Herenai Nobles this time, and that's going to hurt. But the Romena Marines have effectively been devastated on that end. Still a lot of Numenorian units to go around, but I am making headway against Rune. I've tossed in my Parathil Randirum, although into the front of spears. Probably not a good idea. The champions of Kobos Haven still fighting hard. I've brought in now some Black Swan Renegades to help relieve that unit. I'm going to pull out my cavalry, try and save them for another day. And now I'm advancing on the rest of the Runic line, which has committed a lot of troops to try and help out his ally. One important thing to note is that I've actually brought my 2 units of cavalry here, my Parathil Cav, around the back of the Runic position. And he doesn't have any other cavalry left over here that can really threaten a unit of Erethirum. He's got his spears, of course, so I'm going to have to be careful about them. But a lot of these units are a lot softer targets. I don't know if I mentioned the Campbell's Chosen, but they're definitely here as well. But they're going to need to be fighting against my front line once I move in. And you can see that I've gotten very, very close to his front. I'm just trying to keep my unit cohesion as I move in. Over here, the Runic forces still holding their ground well with the Numenorians. Both of these forces are very, very well trained, high morale. But Rudauer is doing just enough damage and keeping them busy just long enough. Over here, they've been, looks like on their right wing, they've been crushed. In the center, they're doing well. And their left wing is still kind of in debate. Sorry about that, guys. Romena Marines getting absolutely butchered here by some Coldfell Maidens. And they're also going to tie down the Numenorian Shadow Guard, which is going to keep the Runic, or I keep calling them Rune, the Rudauer center intact for a little bit longer. No, it looks like they are losing in the center after all. Over in the back here, I'm trying to hunt down the Camel's Dragon Knights. I thought he had his general in there. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do this to you guys again. Oh, I really need some water. I know that's irritating. Variags of the steps being brought in to try and stabilize the situation. Over here, with the addition of 2 new units of infantry, the Runic forces and the Numenorians are overmatched entirely. One sec, guys. There we go. I had to silence myself while I violently cleared my throat. And now I've engaged the runic front line. Well, sort of. I'm routing the East-Run Hunters, and they're being used by DI to hold me down so that units like his crossbows can do some damage. It looks like DI was actually in the process of shifting his crossbows over to deal with my blob of units that was flanking both Numenor and Rune. But now with the advance of my army, DI is going to have no choice but to pull off those resources, which is simultaneously what I wanted, but also what I don't want, because these crossbows are extremely powerful against my Dol Amroth units. But at least I'm cutting off the flow of reinforcements, so DI is not going to have a chance to influence that side of the battle any longer. Now the runic forces have been scattered along with the Numenorians. Got a couple companies here in pursuit, but I think I turned them around. I'm going to send them over here to the center to try and win the day. Temple Executioners and a combination of Numenorian Marines and Lokflagrim have basically won the day. Rudar doesn't really have a lot of like dedicated infantry forces left, but he does have some obnoxious units. Got some Javies here that he's using to great effect. The Troll Hunter is going to hold down the fort, and the Ferodrim Javelins are 2 HP. So the Numenorians and the Easterlings have won the day against Rune, or against Rudour. I keep calling them Rudour. That's maybe never going to stop for this video. I'll work on it later, I swear. But now they're going to run into some reserve units. They're not exactly cohesive in the back here. There's kind of units running this way and that. It seems like they've gotten a little bit lost and turned around in the hills and the forest, which Rudour, I'm sure, doesn't mind at all. So Rudour is going to have a chance to pull it back there. And certainly with the addition of some reinforcements here, got my Blackswan Renegades and my Tarnassian Shield Bearers already on their way to reinforce my ally. I've got a decent amount of Champions of Kobos Haven, only winded, charging down a unit here of Lokflagrim who's looking the other direction. Oh, that's going to go real well. Let's get that charge in. That's really going to suck for the Flagrim. That might break them almost immediately, in fact. Yeah, heavy casualties there, and they're going to break. And that's going to be the end of Rune's reinforcements, and now it's just going to be a matter of trying to mop up the remaining Numenorians in the woods who are all very scattered. Meanwhile, over here, I've been fighting against the runic front line, and because of all the reinforcements that DI sent to the other side, he's really going to struggle here, except in one area where he is beating me back very heavily. This is where the Campbell's Chosen are hanging out. I've got some of my pikemen. I was trying to get them to advance. I kept giving them attack orders, but they just refused to. But finally, they're going to move in and support the element arms who are struggling mightily. And I don't really have any flanking units to support there either. So what I'm going to do is move in on my right wing with some Dornernal archers and lay down some enfiladating fire. I actually brought in my cavalry now. And there's the Balcos Sapphire Bladesmen. I'm just trying to run as much disruption on the AP missile elements of DI's army as I possibly can. I don't really want to commit to anything. I just want to get in there with my cavalry, keep these units from firing. I think I also sent in my Parathil to hack down a bunch of the runic crossbowmen, but I think these Remenic crossbowmen came in and ended up helping the crossbowmen to defeat them, so I've only got this one unit of cav remaining. Nice little downhill charge here into the Eastern crossbowmen. I've also managed to keep the Balcos Sapphire tribesmen busy as well. And I think the crossbows use their ammunition a little bit earlier. If you look over here, you can see a lot of like dead infantry for me in the woods, like in the tree line just before we made it to the runic front line. So there's a lot of dead Dol Amroth forces behind in the woods, but I've managed to make it into the front, doing excellent damage to most of the runic line where I am winning. We've got some flanking units over here as well. Tarnassian Shield Bearers backing up the Blackswan Renegades, and they're swiftly defeating the Scion Rim. Sapphire Tribesmen, or Bladesmen rather, being brought in to try and hold down the line. But my allies now come in with his cavalry, Eastern Crossbowmen, just running disruption. Rendine Nobles as well, making it into the fray, and some more Rudour reinforcements moving in to try and turn DI's flank even further. He's very exposed to this. The Rudour forces will be able to come in basically directly from the rear, and because I was winning in most places, I wasn't too worried about a hammer and anvil attack. In fact, if I had just hammer and anvil, as you'd think would be conventional, I would just get shot to pieces by these strong crossbowmen. So now that they've been swiftly dealt with, now I'm going to have time to hammer and anvil. Going from the rear, hit those Eastron warriors. That should be enough to break them, even with the high morale bonus the Campbell's Chosen are going to be giving them. And the Eastron warriors are going to break and flee. And about at the same time, the rest of the runic army starts to fall apart, and my Dol Amroth warriors are going to be victorious. So we chose our moment very wisely to advance into this runic army. Diaz is a very experienced player. If I'd have just walked into the army that he had, especially with the hidden units that I didn't know were there, I suspected, but I didn't know, I would have simply just been shot to pieces, and my front line would have fallen apart. So it was necessary, I think, to kind of drag out the match a little bit and wait for a proper opportunity. And when most of his cavalry was spent as well over here, fighting my Haven Knights and fighting against the Runic Knights as well, then I was free to come in from the rear, and that was really the I want to call it the axe in the head, or the nail in the coffin of the Runic army. It was really not a lot that he could do, I think, at that point. So there you have it. Not exactly the most even of fights. I mean, I'm showing you the percentages now. There was really more like 75 to 90. And of course, the remaining troops here, I didn't have this many remaining. That's going to be all my troops plus the survivors, like people to get healed. So it wasn't the closest game, is what I'm laboriously driving at there. But it was a lot of fun, and it does show off some cool mechanics and new stuff in 0.97 that's going to be important for people to pay attention to. So yeah, I definitely wanted to show it off to you. Now we'll take a look at the casualties, because I know people love to see these. It's very important to them. Pretty well good across the board. My Renegades, some of them didn't get as many kills as they could have, but there also wasn't as many Easterlings to go around at that point. Didn't call them... No, never mind. It's Rudar that I've been calling Rune. Never mind. But yeah, there wasn't really quite so many Easterlings for them to beat up with their maces. My Dornal Archers did really well. The inflating fire and the good position that they ended up having was really good. Champions of Kobas Haven, I could not have been more pleased with how they performed in this. They were absolutely instrumental in holding down the line initially against the Easterlings as they were trying to break the left wing of Rudauer. But also, once they took to the offensive, they were just unstoppable. So really, really enjoyed using those particular units. I like this build as well. It's fairly balanced, and I tend to enjoy balanced builds, but it's also versatile. I could have rushed with that, and I think done very well with my 4 cavalry. I had some bow cavalry options as well, which can be used to incredible effect against a large number of units. So yeah, it's balanced, but it was primarily a rush army. That's what I was intending to do in the first place. So cool army comps, a neat new map, and we had some really skilled players in the field today. So hope you guys enjoyed. Take care, everybody.